there are things like Dorito chips that we obviously that's intuitive and we're like, yeah, we should definitely like reduce our intake of Dorito chips. But there are also nutrient dense foods within that particular definition. In terms of processing, one of the very interesting things is obviously the MAHA movement has been very focused on this term ultra processed foods, and they have kind of this request right now to define that and actually have a definition, because you have to have a definition if you're going to make regulation based off of a definition. And right now it's pretty undefined. So in the nutrition science world, we've been using this definition based off of the NOVA classification. When you look at like research into ultra processed foods, they're generally using this NOVA classification definition, which I can just define it really quickly. There's 4 different classifications. Best way for me to explain it is using corn. So you have unprocessed, which would be like corn picked from the garden. Minimally processed, which would be something like frozen corn. So it's, minimally processed because it's shucked. Is that the word? Shucked off and then frozen. Processed, which would be like canned corn. Maybe there's like some salt in there, which helps with processing. And then ultra processed would be like a Dorito chip, right? So it's the definition of ultra processed is using some sort of like ingredient or processing method that you don't have access to in your kitchen. And so you wouldn't be able to replicate a Dorito chip in your kitchen. Now, the problem with this definition is that there are things like Dorito chips that we obviously that's intuitive and we're like, yeah, we should definitely like reduce our intake of Dorito chips. But there are also nutrient dense foods within that particular definition of, an ingredient or processing method that we don't have access to. So there's yogurts within that. There's really nutrient dense like frozen meals. Most protein powders fall into that ultra processed definition, right? And so the idea that we should just avoid all ultra processed foods when we're using that NOVA classification is the problem, because there's certainly nutrient dense foods within that that can fit into a healthful meal. And so I think that's the thing. So with these new dietary guidelines, they're using within the guidelines themselves, they use, is it highly processed? I think, yeah. They use the term highly processed instead of ultra processed, which is interesting. Also doesn't have a definition. So also, to Kevin's point, when he was talking about like how impactful are these going to be from a regulatory perspective, again, you can't really regulate if you don't have a working definition, if you don't have an actual definition of what something means. And so I don't know like how much that's going to actually impact policy.